Our top story this evening, visitors flying between Singapore and China under a new fast lane for essential travel will not be quarantined for 14 days. But there are strict requirements, including clearing 2 swab tests. It's part of new protocols outlined by the Ministries of Trade and Industry and Foreign Affairs. The changes, which begin on Monday, will ensure the safe and gradual resumption of air travel. And it starts with travel between Singapore and 6 Chinese cities. Well, for more, we're joined by aviation analyst Shukor Yusof, founder of aviation strategy firm Endow Analytics. Shukor, thanks for joining us this evening. So how significant is this deal, especially given that the battering the aviation sector has taken from the COVID-19 pandemic?
It's one small step for Singapore and a little leap for the aviation sector after what we've gone through the last 2-3 months. It's a big deal in the sense that it's the first time in several months that we're allowed to fly, notwithstanding the fact that it's only for essential and business travel. Leisure travel is still off. And so, it's taking baby steps and see how it goes before in the future, before leisure travel takes place. But that's going to take some time.
Shukor, plenty of airlines have gotten into financial difficulty during this period. Does this alleviate some of the pressure at all?
Not at all, I'm afraid. I think airlines are still very much generally struggling. Many of the planes are still grounded. Many of our employees are still on unpaid leave. And so the situation remains still very bleak and grim. But, it's what we're seeing now. It's a small step towards a reopening of some of the borders in some countries. And so there's hope just yet that there will be a slow but an improved condition where airlines can start to explore safe places for both residents and flyers to fly to.
All right, so saying that, how does this then impact Singapore Airlines' timeline for recovery?
Well, as we know, Terminals 2 and 4 have been shut down for the next, 18 months at least. So that is an indicator that things are not about to recover very quickly. So Singapore Airlines, which is very much reliant and heavily dependent on international long-haul destinations, which is likely to be the last to recover, in this pandemic, they will have to hunker down a bit more. I think we've read in the last day or two that SI is going to start passenger services to Auckland and Christchurch in New Zealand. So that's a good small step to the reopening, but that's very selective destinations, and pretty much cargo and freight, and those things are going to be dominant.
Nonetheless, Shukor, the talk of these green lanes has got people very excited. I mean, besides China, Singapore is also in talks with several other countries to set up something similar: South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Malaysia as well. So what is the thinking behind this particular selection of countries?
It's a very innovative concept that Singapore's come up with, this green lane thing, which allows, it's like an air corridor. Some other countries have called it a travel bubble, where you start flying to another country that you are comfortable and confident that they have put into place safety measures for residents and air travelers. So they've done this with China. I think the next would likely be Australia, and New Zealand has that, which were one of the few countries to have come out of this in recent times. But other countries remain very much in the danger zone. So it's going to take a while before the green lane expands to other countries.
Shukor, speaking of this comfort level, this priority list is based on economic urgency, or is it more related to perhaps maybe health policy?
I think it's both, Glenda. It's a time where we need to reflect that, while we're still dealing with the virus, the economic environment has to move on. People need to continue working, as well as the officials need to move around and do their job, and business has to take place, even if on a smaller scale than previously. So what it indicates is that, the governments in this part of the world, especially in Southeast Asia and East Asia, are comfortable enough to have a comfort level amongst certain countries where they can allow officials and certain corporate and business people to travel without fear that they might endanger residents of both countries.
Shukor, let's get your thoughts on this relative fast pace for the move for essential travel. What does it mean for leisure travel then?
For leisure travel, I think we're still very, very much, confined to our homes just yet, because there's still a lot of restrictions and limitations to some of the places that people can go until such time that those restrictions, the border controls in many countries are lifted. Then unfortunately leisure travel and tourism is off limits. So while essential travel with corporate travel and official business are going to be played out in the next few weeks, few months, the leisure travel is still very much not there yet. There is no demand. I think people who have stayed at home for quite a while, the 3 months, before this, they will not be easily enticed to go out very quickly, especially when, that talk that you have to be certified before you can fly, and you have to pay huge amounts of money before you can travel. So that's not going to happen anytime soon.
It's going to be some time before we get out those suitcases, and we'll be dusting off the dust from them, won't we? Shukor, thank you very much for those thoughts on that. Shukor Yusof there from Endow Analytics.